On July 23rd, we are hosting quite an event at the Bell House in Brooklyn, and you can get your tickets now. Eliza and I will be joined on stage by some of the food world's most interesting figures, including Haley Catalano and Chuck Cruz, and the one and only Padma Lakshmi. We will talk about summer cooking and some of the big topics of the day. The event will also feature a live taping of Bon Appetit's Bake Club with Jesse Shepchek and Shilpa Uskokovic. That's Haley, Chuck, Shilpa, Jesse, and Padma, all appearing on the Bell House stage with Eliza and I. July 23rd is the date. Get your tickets at the Bell House website or the link in our show notes. I hope to see you there. Embark on a gastronomic tour through Europe's finest flavors with European Tasty Tales, a podcast series that explores interesting stories behind traditions, taste, and iconic European Union products such as Italian Pecorino Romano, Croatian extra virgin olive oil, and Irish whiskey. Each episode celebrates the stories, culture, and people behind these extraordinary culinary experiences. Start your tasty adventure today by listening to European Tasty Tales on Spotify.
One thing that this trip illuminated for us is a lot of the dishes that you can find in America. They're their own specific genre of Fujianese food. If we wanted to create like a traditional dish, like American markets are so limited, so could we substitute something that already exists? Do we want it to taste traditional to the people here versus traditional to places back in China?
This is Taste. I'm your host, Eliza Barbanel. Jess Eng is a food writer based in New York City. She's a regular contributor here at Taste, alongside a great roster of publications like Serious Eats, The Washington Post, and The New York Times. It's so fun to have Jess on the show to talk about some of her favorite stories, her latest experiments with home fermentation, and her recent reporting trip in Fuzhou, China.
And at the top of the show, it's the return of Three Things, where Eliza and I talk about what is exciting us in the world of restaurants, cookbooks, and the food world as a whole. Eliza, we're back with Three Things. How are you?
I'm good, Matt. Do you want to go first?
I sure will. I am talking all about books now. We are in the midst of fall cookbook preview and planning.
We are.
And I'm extremely excited about the season. We obviously publish books here at Crown, but I'm not only talking about Crown books, but the first one is from Crown. It is a really cool book from somebody I had not really heard of before I was alerted to the book. It's Measure with Your Heart by Hannah Taylor. Hannah is a creator. It goes by the handle Lily Lu Tay on Instagram and TikTok. And Hannah's story is really cool. Hannah lives in a rural town in Georgia and is creating recipes and sharing her small town life with her followers. But I really like the way she does cooking. I think she has a lot of skills and has a really nice way of recipe development, doing Southern classics but with modern spins. And I just think that her energy on Reels is infectious. And I mean, some of the recipes in this book sound cool. I haven't fully read it, and we're going to have her on the show later this fall. She does a butternut squash casserole. She's doing her own vanilla extract and bone broth from scratch. So there's definitely some foundational cooking. There's a ham hock with lima bean stew. And I just really like this for our publishing program. Having Hannah here, and Hannah's not like a big city chef or collaborator. It's from rural Georgia. And I love that. And can't wait to hear more about her story.
Yeah, I love watching her videos whenever they come up for me. So I'm excited to see how she's expanding into a book format.
Right. What's your first thing?
My first thing is that I went to a new Thai restaurant in my neighborhood. It's called Samyan, and I went there because the New York Mag roundup of their favorite bites of the year so far, Tammy mentions the wings there. And I'm honestly not normally a big wings girl, but the way that they were described sounded so good to me. And when I went, I really was so smitten. I feel like I could come back. Everything I had was so good, but I would even come back for happy hour and just have like some nice cold beers and these wings. They do split the flats in half. So they have like two single-boned winglets, they call them. So you have even more kind of like fried surface area.
Yes.
So it's super sticky. They have a kind of sweet and salty caramelized fish sauce glaze on it. Of course, like a lot of herbs and chili. And it was so delicious.
I love a good Thai chicken wing. What's the vibe like in the restaurant?
It's cute. It's small. very red on the outside, maybe seats for like 15 or so inside. There was a giant fan that was blowing directly onto the back of my head the entire meal. So I felt very refreshed, although
Yeah.
my hair did not dry very well. But I'm really happy to have a good Thai spot in the neighborhood in Clinton Hill, and
Yeah.
I'm sure I'll be back.
Great. Well, thanks for sharing that.
What's your next thing?
My next thing is a book that I have not read. It is a novel, and I'm really excited about it because I think it's giving a lot of Midnight Diner, that amazing Japanese television series that I think had 5 or 6 seasons that I think a lot of listeners may have watched. It's called Ex-Boyfriend's Favorite Recipe Funeral Committee by Saki Kawashiro, translated by Yuka Meno, and it's coming out in October, and I'm really excited to read it. The log line, I've not read this, but I'm just interested. It's a 29-year-old Momoko is tragically dumped by her boyfriend, ends up in a restaurant and starts telling the story of this great tragedy of being dumped. She befriends the owner of the restaurant or the cafe, who is a Buddhist monk, and they start talking about the food that Momoko has cooked for her boyfriend that he loved so much, but then dumped her anyways. And they hatch a plot that they're going to start cooking these dishes in the cafe and inviting people who have maybe had a heartbreak in their life to come to these dinners and share. And it's sweet, and it feels tonally, it's Japanese in translation, and I love reading Japanese translation because with a great translation, with syntax being accurate, it's an energy that at times feels very different from literature written in English as a first language. And I find it really enjoyable for me as a reader. And I'm just excited about the book.
Yeah, it sounds fun.
Great. What's your next thing?
I'll talk about a book also.
Yeah.
I'm really excited about Ruby Tando's new book, Al Consuming, that's out this fall at Penguin Random House. I think Ruby is just such a smart thinker about so many things, including food. And this book is not a cookbook. It's a kind of series of essays talking about how food has become the dominant cultural history here in the West. And it covers everything from like Top Chef and TikTok to boba tea, all kinds of food trends. And it kind of really digs into like, what is the impulse behind this trend? Why is it resonating with people? How much is this our taste? How much is this taste being kind of dictated for us by their cultural patterns? I'm really excited to finish reading this book.
Yeah.
I've been enjoying it so far, and I think hopefully have Ruby into the studio when she's over in New York later in the fall.
Really excited about this one. And Ruby and I collaborated on a number of stories for Taste maybe 5 years ago, and she wrote a really memorable piece about the cheese boards and the cheese board industry that I really enjoyed going through the edits with her and getting that published. So can't wait for this collection.
I think even that cheese board story feels similar to this book in terms of the kind of like studied analysis and like reasoning and kind of discussion that I expect from her.
Great point. And I think what Ruby does so well is like there's a strong point of view and there's deep cultural reporting, but it's not about burning down institutions just to do it. I think that there's like really strong reporting and backbone with this writing, and it's very nuanced and it's very hard to do because you can obviously have hot takes all day, but that's hardly it.
Yeah, and I think it's really ripe for this moment where I think food trends are at like a hyper speed, and every week it's like strawberry matcha, Dubai chocolate, like all of these things that like all of a sudden are everywhere, and I think wondering like how does this happen? What is the impact of that? Is something we can all do more of.
This is really, I love that you're reading. I'm really interested in how she unravels these big ideas in it.
What's your last thing?
My last thing is a book that we're publishing here as well. It's not a food book, but I'm really excited about it. It's called Script Notes from the very popular podcast Script Notes. It is from John August and Craig Mazin. And John and Craig have hosted this podcast for a very long time. I found myself listening to it during the pandemic, during long walks. You know, we all had those moments. And I have really very little ambition to write a screenplay. I just was so fascinated in the way they think about creativity and the way they think about dialogue and why we love film and television so much. They're the ones creating the words. And this book is compiled from 550 hours of those Script Notes conversations. And it's part writing course. It's part, interview series. And there's some of the sharpest minds in television. As a reminder, John August was behind the films The Nines, Big Fish, go and has written several YA novels. And Craig Mazin, of course, is the creator of The Last of Us, Chernobyl. I love their dynamic on Pod. They're very different personalities, and they're really, really, really opinionated about the industry, which I like. And I'm sure this book will be a nice translation of that energy. That's my last one. I have to admit, I want to call it one last book on three things. It's not actually a fall book. It's a spring book. I thought it was a fall book. I did the prep. I want to talk about it. You can hit the pre-order because it looks amazing, and I'm really excited about it. It's from Ella Quittner, and it's called Obsessed with the Best, 100 Methodically Perfected Recipes Based on 20 Head-to-Head Tests. It is what it is. It is a number of categories, 20 to be exact, where Ella is doing bench testing and really coming to the perfect chocolate chip cookie recipe, the pancake recipe, roasted chicken. And I've worked with Ella here at Taste. She wrote a piece about cosmic brownies back in the day. And I'm a big fan of her work. And I think this is a really fresh book. It is not a fall release. It's a spring release, but I just had to talk about it because I had prepped for it.
Yeah, I have been following along with Ella's many, many, many tests that she's been doing on Instagram. And it really is, I think, an overused phrase in media today is, I did this so you don't have to.
Yes.
But I think really Ella did do it so we don't have to. And I'm interested in reaping that reward.
Very well said. Very well said. I can't wait to read it. What is your last thing?
My last thing is I want to just shout out how much I respect and admire LA Taco's recent reporting. I know that we're planning on having them on the show to talk more about it, but, LA Taco has been a website dedicated to, quote, celebrating the taco lifestyle in Los Angeles for many years. But over the past couple months, as ICE has really been ramping up their raids in Los Angeles, they've kind of turned into this breaking news source that I think is doing easily the best local reporting about what's happening, how the communities are being impacted. They recently published a story called Unbroken Spirit, how a detained street vendor is now aiding detainees from ICE facility, about this longtime street vendor organizer named Emma DePaz. They also have this crucial tips on safely observing and documenting ICE activity that is easily the most helpful, useful resource I've read in terms of what actually are your rights in terms of where you can film, what you can say to people without being accused of obstruction. And they obviously accept subscribers and supporters to the website. So I think in terms of seeing local reporting and wanting to kind of really support that work, I'm really wanting to do that with LA Taco, and I just think it's really kind of important and invaluable writing.
Well, thank you for bringing that up, and we're going to have Javier Cabral on, who is the editor there, and talk about the work specifically. We're going to link to the LA Taco website in the show notes. You can support, you can subscribe. It's important work, really important for Los Angeles, for the restaurant community, for really everybody who lives there and needs information about what is happening on the streets. And I love that independent journalism is making a real impact for this important era and moment we're in. And it's a reminder to support local independent media.
Yeah. And I will say, I just focused on kind of more of this community resource, political, day-to-day reporting that they're doing, but they also are continuing to do great restaurant coverage. I think they continue to be one of the best places to find out about places to go have amazing food in LA. And it's great to see them doing both things at once.
Yeah, I'm going to ask Javier about the challenge of doing both scopes of reporting, because they're very different, and having this big ambition to really report day after day after day. It's incredible work. So.
Yeah, I think, they are very different in terms of tone and subject, but I think a lot of it is rooted in the same community of Latin American, Central American, Mexican immigrants in LA that are contributing so much by having these restaurants. So I think it is interesting to see that and to see how they'll continue to report.
Yeah. Well, thanks for sharing the three things.
You too. Jess Eng, this is Taste. Thank you for coming on the podcast. I'm really happy to have you in the studio. You're one of my favorite writers to work with here at Taste, and also just a great person to chat with. So I think we should have a lot of fun things to talk about.
I'm excited to be here. Thanks for having me, Eliza.
So something I don't think I've ever asked you is what draws you to food writing, but I'm really interested in how you kind of have found yourself in this space.
I think, as you know best, food writing isn't always just about the food, even though that's the entrance for a lot of people. People can immediately understand it because it's something that they experience in their lives, whether they're cooking it, making it, consuming it, watching it on social media. But when I was in college and I was trying to come up with presentations or final projects, I always ended up writing about food, whether it was in a data visualization class, a history about Mesopotamia, my thesis, which is more of an art history thesis than anything. The narrative food always found its way in. And that's also one of my favorite food articles to consume as well. I like reading the stories of people behind food. When I'm interviewing someone for a food story, sometimes I just notice that we're talking not about food, but we're talking about their lives, their way of getting to it, the dreams that they've had when they first got into the business. When I'm writing this story, it's so funny to look back on the interviews and see like half of the interviews not just about food, but like the culture and politics and climate questions that come out of working in the business.
Yeah, I think obviously it is such an intersectional topic, and even knowing a little bit of your academic background and the fact that you were, is this right, data visualization and folklore double major?
Yes, it was.
Has anyone ever had that combination before?
I mean, maybe there have been people out there who've done something like this, but to put it explicitly on paper, I don't think I've seen anyone yet who's had it. But I think the underlying thing the whole time was storytelling. I think I was naturally good at math as a kid. I'm not very good now, but in college, I really wanted to pursue that. I wanted to use that part of my brain. And the classes that spoke to me the most were the ones not of, going to the whiteboard and proving something through a formula, but actually going and exploring how people were collecting data, how they were collecting nuggets of information. And maybe it was more of a training in journalism than I knew at the time, or like reporting, but I was always questioning, how are we getting this data? Is it representative of the population you're trying to speak about? Is it ethically correct collected? And sort of all those questions came bubbling up.
Yeah. I think as an editor, to me, I see both kind of like that more traditional like math, statistics, data set, and also the folklore as being ways that people are collecting information about the world around them and trying to define it. And I think it's a really kind of appealing combination because it results in storytelling that is kind of qualitative and quantitative in different ways.
Yeah, it was a very fun major to pursue because I could take these classes that were focused on the history of ancient food and storytelling, and then kind of go in a different direction and take a discrete mathematics class, and we're talking about the history of math and how people came up with numbers. So that was a cool part of the degree.
Okay, at a later date, I want to learn about how people invented numbers. But I guess for the focus of this podcast and your writing in general, you write a lot for Taste and for other food publications. Are there any stories that you would look back on as especially pivotal or meaningful for you in your own kind of growth as a reporter and writer?
I think there are two stories that stand out. This is when I started realizing that I could write about food. I think my mom's an accountant. My dad works in management for insurance companies. And so I always didn't really imagine that a career in writing could be an actual thing. So in college, having sort of a break and taking a gap year, I was sending out my college papers to different publications, the first being Atlas Obscura. And I was like, I want to write about the oldest recipes in the world. And so they took that pitch and they're like, can you just make this recipe at home? That really inspired me because I was going to write about it. And part of going to school is just, putting pen to paper and reading. And that was more of an experiential thing where I was like, oh, I actually have to make this in my home kitchen. I have to figure out what ingredients they use. Of course, it's very different from 4,000 years ago.
Yeah, wait, what was the recipe?
It's a recipe for the oldest super stew. And there's no salt involved at that point because they didn't really have this way of harvesting salt. And so there's a lot of literature out there that says that this food is not, you shouldn't consume this food. It's not very, delicious. But they've had like back then they had a huge tradition of wedding like these elaborate feasts. And you could get salt from many other things too, like seafood and things like that. So I just thought that was an interesting way. I just thought that was an interesting thought experiment. I was like, and then to actually put it to paper was very rewarding because it tasted better than I thought.
What is in, do you remember what's in the stew?
It's a beef, I believe it's a lean cut of beef. I'm forgetting the cut. And there were carrots and I believe
I'm looking at a photo of it right now. Actually.
Maybe you can pull it up.
I'm on
it's been a while.
No, I'm not trying to like grill you on the Mesopotamian stew. I don't think anyone has ever mentioned Mesopotamia to me on the podcast before. So I love that we're kind of crossing it off. Yeah, okay. So it's leek and garlic pounded together with meat broth, right?
Yeah, what direction would you take that if you had a limited...
I guess I would probably need to get like a mortar and pestle. I have one. I just don't think it would maybe be big enough for this quantity. I don't know. It's very interesting to think about like what were the tools available, not just the ingredients, but the tools and obviously, electricity or like a home oven, those kinds of things weren't around.
And it's even like you have to think of, I mean, they were making pottery back then, but like the vessels look so different too.
Yeah.
They're not using the traditional tablespoon or cups. They're having their own way of measuring.
Yeah. Oh, that's so interesting. Okay, what was the other story that came to mind for you?
And then the other story that came to mind was my first reported story for the Washington Post. And it was about vegan barbecue in America. And so this is when there was, Beyond Meat was sort of reaching a zeitgeist in the cultural conversation. And there were restaurant owners who had been practicing like plant-based lifestyles and integrating them into their cultural foods of their culture and cultural foods for a long time. So I like this story because it started with me walking around San Francisco. And those are my favorite stories where I'm just like walking on the street. I get an idea. I'm like, hey, that's an interesting restaurant or person or thing I've never seen before. Let me go talk to them. So it was this barbecue truck called Vegan Mob in San Francisco run by an awesome restaurateur who's done a lot for the community in SF and Oakland. And then it's like, I really want to like pitch a story about this. So I was working not in food writing, but in graphics and data visualization for the Post as an intern. And I pitched it to Joe Yonan, who's the editor. And it's like, I want to write about vegan barbecue. And this is what I'm seeing. I've seen it also in other parts of the United States, at this one place in Atlanta. Can I write about it? And that was my first experience of getting edited. And he's like, wait, there's an interesting narrative here. Like the South is known for being like a meat-heavy, smoke-rich area. And what if you talk about it by sort of threading that not just through Atlanta, but through these other producers? Can you find them? So that was like a research moment for me where I had to like go out and I was sourcing things, and it was the pandemic. So it was all over social media, but I had over like 5 to 10 conversations with different people, including people there's a guy from Texas Monthly who writes about barbecue, a barbecue column. So I talked to him about this new wave of restaurant owners. And really, I like that story not only because I was walking and found the story, but also because I was threading this narrative not just between one place, but so many other places. And they were doing it independently of one another, too.
Yeah. I think it's always rewarding as a writer to get one idea and then follow the thread and realize that there's a whole tapestry at play and it's not just one narrative.
Yeah, that was so cool. And then after the story hit, I got to visit them, too. So that was awesome.
Yeah, and put like the dishes into your real life experience.
Exactly.
Right now, as we're talking, I'm sipping on this delicious cold brew tea that you brought back from your recent research reporting trip in China. You were in Fuzhou, and I know that you were kind of developing some stories. And I was wondering if you could catch me up on maybe like what brought you out there in the first place, because we haven't had a chance to talk about it yet.
Yeah. The thread of the ideas, I met Alan, who I traveled with to China way back when at a birthday party. We just bonded over food. So that was a really special moment. And as I got to know him, I knew that he ran this organization called Fuzhou America. It was started 6 or 7 years ago in New York, bringing together, like, first people who grew up in the Northeast area who were Fujianese and wanted to, like, have a culture. It's a cultural community for them to host events, to connect, and to get in touch with their roots, whether through food or games and other things. And then last year in September, October, I wrote an article about Nin Hao, which is a Fujianese restaurant that opened up in Prospect Park. And that was one of the first modern Fujianese restaurants in New York, contemporary restaurants in New York. And that was really awesome to see. And because I was researching the history of East Broadway and the Fujianese community there, not only there, but also Brooklyn's Sunset Park and Flushing. And as I was researching this, I was relying on Alan. We were talking a lot. And I said, hey, there's actually a bigger story here. It's not just this one. A lot of things start with like that one story, but there's a bigger story here. There's a group of people who sacrificed a lot to come to New York, America, and opened up their own businesses, whether that's restaurants, nail salons, and their connection to the community is so deep. It's been 40 years, around 40 years since a majority of them came to New York's Chinatown, but there's no sort of document of their recipes. Or stories other than sort of oral storytelling. And I thought, like, and he had been thinking about this for a while, too. He had attempted to create, like, we were just talking different projects. We were like, oh, maybe it could be like a recipe site. It could be like a little book, like a zine, or it could be like a documentary. But I said, oh, I think the cookbook is the ideal format because you can combine all of those things into one.
Right. It's such a malleable form. And if someone is listening who maybe, isn't that familiar with New York Chinatown or with like Fujianese people and that kind of wave of immigration, like it seems to me at least that the Fujianese immigrants that came to Manhattan Chinatown kind of established the Chinatown that we know today in terms of this wave of restaurants. And maybe even some of the restaurants today are doing Szechuan or like other styles of Chinese cooking, but maybe the food that they're eating in the back of the restaurant at the end of the day is still like Fujianese.
Yes. To go back a little bit, I should just say that the first like wave of immigrants who came to America were majority from Cantonese. So they came during the gold rush and mostly to San Francisco.
Right.
So that's like where my family's from. And I have a connection to there because my grandmother has done a lot for the community and would go almost like a few times a month to eat, but also to walk around and support the businesses. But in Manhattan Chinatown, there's like the Chinatown that sort of the tourists know, like around Mott Street and Pell, and there's a lot of history there. We could kind of go into that, but I feel like that's another episode. And then there's sort of these, I wouldn't call them newer, but extended parts of Chinatown that are especially home to newer immigrants or people who, there's these like different pockets of Chinatowns, whether that's like Flushing or the north side of Chinatown with East Broadway that more Fujianese people are part of. And sometimes they've like had some mixing and then historically they haven't. So it's interesting to see that because the New York history of Chinatown is so different from SF. So I'm learning as I go through this whole process.
And before you left to go on this trip, you were doing a lot of exploring, like at a lot of Fujianese restaurants and businesses here in New York.
For sure. Yeah. This is one fact I mean, you're invited anytime, Eliza, to any of these tours. It's a whole day affair. But one thing I always like say to people who on this tour, I'm like, you've definitely had Fujianese food before. If not any specific dishes we're going to have today, you've definitely been to a restaurant owned by someone who's Fujianese because after 1980 and 1990, when a majority of them came from the Fuzhou province, they came to America and they would open up these networks of Chinese restaurants. So New York might have been their first stop, but there's these networks of buses that would take them all around the country to like Richmond, Virginia, to Nashville, Tennessee, so many other places, and they would open up your run-of-the-mill Chinese restaurant. So it would be like takeout, it would be like kung pao chicken, things like that, and or a Japanese restaurant. There's a lot of like when you think of like a Chinese-owned Japanese restaurant, that's usually like someone who's Fujianese. So that's the one thing I always tell people. And then also, if you grew up in New York, you've probably had like peanut butter noodles before. So it's like
that's what I was going to say. Is I think the Fujianese restaurant I've been to the most is on Grand Street, and it's Shuijiao Fuzhou.
Yes,
so it's like the peanut noodle dumpling kind of spot, and it's always busy.
It's always busy. There's like at any hour of the day, we were trying to go for like a tour, and we're like, this is maybe we'll take you a different place because we will never find a seat.
Right, and you don't want to be on like the bad side of those aunties running the restaurant. Also, it's too important.
Yeah.
So we've talked about maybe like broad strokes, some of the food that people would have had before, some of the kinds of restaurants. When you were planning your trip to go to Fuzhou, what kind of things did you know you wanted to do?
Oh, man. To be honest, a lot of the food in New York is so different from what you could find in Fuzhou or Fujian, at least at the... If Ninhao was like the first contemporary restaurant that's Fujianese in New York, then what else could we find in Fuzhou? And I think whenever you're traveling or when I'm doing like a research travel, I'm like, how are the locals eating? Like what, not only just in the home, but are they going, if they're going for a fancy meal, where they're going, if they're going to go just get some street food, are they eating it like somewhere on the sidewalk, or is there some other venue? So we wanted to eat at sort of all these places. We had to get peanut butter noodles when we were there, just to taste it. And theirs, of course, were amazing. They had this. It was made with lard and a scallion garlic confit and really local soy sauce, MSG, and peanut butter. Sometimes they wouldn't add peanut butter, which was an interesting thing we observed too. So that was requisite eating. But then we also got to eat at some fancier restaurants too. These are like, because Fujian was the first province in China to actually get the Michelin guide to come to it, which is, it's. I feel like we don't think of Fujianese food as like sort of fancy in the U.S., but that was interesting for me to see. It's because they have like such an abundant resource of, they have such abundant supply of seafood, and that's like one of the things that makes Chinese food so expensive in China and also in America if you're looking for those premier delicacies. And then the other sort of interesting places we ate at were like more home-cooked foods. So there's a genre of eating there called jiatang cai, which is their version of farm to table. So it's like lots of small aquariums, or they're getting the produce fresh and they're cooking it very quickly, like in a hot wok. And that food is so delicious too. And you could find that in New York's Chinatown, but not as many places. And then one other place that we went to, because we were eating mainly in the city, is these countryside versions of restaurants. So it wouldn't be close to like a supermarket, let's say, but they would have like the freshest catch just from that day. And I guess those are kind of similar in my mind. Maybe the last two are similar. But yeah, we were just eating a ton.
Yeah.
And it was a lot.
Yeah. What's your approach to eat that much food? Do you just kind of power through?
Oh my God. I want to hear what your tips are for this, because we were struggling. I think initially I'm more of a planner, so the first 5 days I was like, I want to map out what we're eating. We're going to do 3 to 4 meals a day. And we quickly realized after day 5 that was untenable.
Yeah.
We were just bursting at the seams, and we needed some lighter foods too. That we just wanted, we just needed a break, I think is more.
Yeah. I think it's hard also, I've certainly been on an eating trip I think Matt also is really like he's committed to eating so many meals. I've been with him, and I think it's hard when you are being shown hospitality by people when you're traveling to places because the approach of like ordering a bunch of things and having one bite and then moving on and going to another restaurant, like that doesn't work, right? If people are like inviting you into their home or they really are proud to show you the delicacy of where they are. So I think I just kind of hope it works out and eat as much as I can. But I wouldn't say it's something I'm especially good at or even like, I'd rather have more time and eat at less places. But if you're trying to try as many things as you can, obviously something has to give.
For sure. And I would say we did quite a good job, though. Even though we were like overwhelmed and stuffed, it was we were able to get, at least in broad strokes, like some of the main dishes, whether at all price points.
Yeah. And you also went to some tea farms, right?
We went to some tea farms, yeah. So Fujian is like one of the best places for cultivating tea in China. The climate is good. They have a lot of mountains there, which are essential for tea growing. It's just surrounded by mountains and sea. Mm-hmm. And so you get the diversity and abundance of seafood, but then you also get these like plains, which are so great for growing tea, and the weather is nice as well. So yeah, we went to one of the most famed regions called Fujian, which is in English, it's known as like the rock tea region. Mm. And some of the most expensive tea comes from that region just because of its history, called Da Hong Pao. And there's other varieties as well that we tried today, like a more standard black tea. It was cool to see that because it gave more context to our conversations with people in the city. You sit down at like any restaurant and they have like a little tea room already arranged for you. And this is definitely at the higher end restaurants where it's like a business meeting, you're drinking tea with the owner, and it's like for 40 minutes before the meal even starts. Mm-hmm. And then you have, when you're at home, like these full tea tables that are actually bigger than the dining table itself. And you're like, wow, like they really want a tea set. The tea part is important, if not more important than the actual meal. It's like sitting down, socializing, and like opening your appetite.
Yeah, and you have maybe little snacks also while you're drinking the tea. So that's also part of the thing of trying to eat at so many places.
It actually, I mean, tea is supposed to help. The nickname is oil scraper. So it's supposed to it's like help you digest food. So we were told that. I still was like, I need a break in the middle of eating, but it was awesome.
So I'm curious, coming back from this trip, immersing yourself back in the Fujianese restaurant community here in New York, thinking more about this project, like what perspective did going on that trip give you, and what are you working on now?
Yeah, so I think one thing that this trip illuminated for us, and Alan would probably say the same thing, is a lot of the dishes that you can find in America, they're their own specific genre of Fujianese food, because they're brought to the U.S. From these Fujianese immigrants who immigrated in the 80s and 90s. And so they have this memory of Fujianese food, and they're like, this is how my mom made it, or my dad made it, or this is what I'm learning from other chefs in America, because a lot of them were taught on the job. But like the food there is not only like have techniques change and ingredients change, but the types of produce are so different too. So if we wanted to create like a traditional dish, for example, like American markets are so limited, so could we substitute something that already exists? Do we want it to taste traditional to the people here versus traditional to places back in China? Like, what is our ideal that we're looking for? And because we want to root the stories of this project in New York and Greater America, I think that's a question we're grappling with.
Yeah, I think it is really interesting to think about how place and time and people and availability, all these things come together to shape what our idea of a cuisine is. But the reality is that, food is ever evolving in all of these places at once.
For sure, yeah. And I mean, I will always have like so many great memories were shared there, and we got to like talk to home chefs too, and the home cooks are really phenomenal. There who like, and their pantries aren't all too different from people here, so it's just learning those techniques, or seeing how they actually do it in the kitchen, or we're taught.
Yeah, I think it must be interesting, I imagine, because I know that you are a passionate home cook also. In addition to doing these restaurant stories, you always seem to be like fermenting something at home or making something. So I'm curious if you have any projects that you want to make at home now that you got to view everyone else's kitchens.
Specifically from this kitchen experiment, everyone has. I'm a fermenter, but specifically for Fujianese ferments, there's this thing called, in English, it's called red yeast koji, or red yeast wine. But it is this ingredient that's like super special to the region that honestly you can't find in many other parts of China. In other parts of Asia, you can, but you can also find it on East Broadway in New York's Chinatown, lining the walls, and it's really just rice, a special type of mold, and then water, and then thyme. And it not only is like a wine, which is great too. It's a home ferment, so almost every house we visited had their own version of it, but also a seasoning. So you can put it into soups or stews or marinate things in it. And I would describe the flavor of the marinade as, if I had to put a flavor, like a lactic fermented berry. So it's actually kind of like sweet, a little tart, and it has this underlying umami that's really delicious too.
And is it also like, it's a cooking wine that people will also drink straight, or is it used in one application more than the other?
Oh, you could definitely drink it. I should have brought some here too. I just didn't.
Jess came into the studio with 2 kinds of cold brew tea in a mason jar, a baggie of like olives.
Chinese olives, yeah.
I think you brought a lot of good things.
Next time, when you come over to my place, we'll do it.
The olives are intriguing to me because I don't know if I've had a Chinese olive before.
Yeah, so it's different than I know it's like this matter of translation into English we're learning is there's just not really an English word that summarizes it. The Chinese olive doesn't belong to the Olea family, which is where all these Italian olives come from. It's quite different. It's like the texture is much more firm, and when picked raw, it's not edible. It's very astringent. So you really have to manipulate it as well. I think Italian olives are like that as well, but this one even more so. You have to either like salt brine it, you have to cure it.
Does it taste like what we would consider to be like the Western olive? Okay.
It's a little, it's a grassier. It tastes like the juice of it tastes like pineapple and carrot. So it's much more of I would call it more similar to like a fruit, yeah.
It's so interesting how when you translate things into English, like someone decided to call it an olive, but what I'm picturing an olive would be is completely, I guess they look similar, but the taste is completely different.
They look similar, but yeah, the taste is different. And I think that's what's interesting, because when we do like sampling with people who've never had this before, they're like, oh, this is my favorite thing, and I love Chinese olives, or they're really like, we ask them to rate their favorite food from the tasting, whether it's the tea or the red yeast koji, or the olive, and they're always like the olive because it's so surprising to them. It looks like something, but when you taste it, we give them usually one that's cured with sugar, salt, and MSG. It's kind of like, oh, I'm eating candy.
Yeah, those are all 3 delicious things. So together, I imagine that's really great. And you also just moved to the East Broadway area of Manhattan's Chinatown, which is where a lot of these restaurants and stores that we're talking about are based. I know you just moved, but I'm curious if you feel like you have a different relationship with the neighborhood now that it's where you live versus somewhere that you're kind of, going on the subway to get to.
For sure, yeah. I used to live in Bed-Stuy, so the commute to Chinatown, Alan lives also in that area too, was about 45 minutes, and now it's just a 5-minute walk away, which is awesome. I was telling you, like, the community has been great, like my neighbors. They're Chinese women in their like 50s or 60s, and I've been getting invited to go to opera with them.
Are you going to
the
go?
Mean Opera with them. I think at some point I will go.
You have to.
Yeah, it's going to be amazing. And then in addition to that, like there's so many youth or community-run organizations for like that are younger than that as well. So not only Fuzhou America, I think Chinatown, Wild Project, and there's always something going on. And not that I wasn't aware of that before, but it's just so much easier to get to, whether that's a talk or like meeting and the multi-generational business owners of like Grantee Imports, Wing and Woco. So
I love that. Okay, I can't wait to read this book when it comes out.
Oh my God,
and
give me 4 years.
anyone who's listening who wants to buy the book, please do. And by buy the book, I mean a editor at Penguin Random House, not a guest who would buy it even further from now. But to close today, I want to play a rapid fire game with you.
Oh
So I'm going to make you pick some favorites.
Okay.
It's going to be okay, I promise. Okay, your favorite cookbook?
I think On Food and Cooking, if you can consider that a cookbook, because
a favorite like recent like novel kind of read?
So I've been reading. I haven't read many like novels this year, but the one that I'm really trekking through is Middlemarch. It's about like 800. Have you read it before?
No, but it's on my list.
It's phenomenal. It's about 800 pages. We're going one book at a time because it's broken down to 8 books, and it's a Victorian novel, about like disastrous marriages. So what's not to love all the drama?
Some light reading. Yeah. Your go-to quick bite in Manhattan Chinatown?
Definitely like the peanut butter noodles bamian at Fuzhou. Yeah.
Your favorite grocery store in the city?
I think the Chinatown supermarket. That's like 5 minutes away. I feel like it's
which one?
It's on brand. It's on East Broadway.
Your go-to bodega snack?
Oh my gosh. I do like a 3-part snack. It's a little chaotic. I do Spindrift and then Funyuns and then Haribo gummies.
Do you eat them all at once, or is there an order for that?
This is like something deeply wedged in this is like a middle school tradition for me, so I feel like it's too late to go back, but
you're going bite for bite, gummy, Funyun, washed down with Spindrift.
I do that in the dead of winter.
Wow, honestly, that's heroic. Your favorite bar in New York?
Ooh, I've been going to Cellar 36 a lot just because it's like in my neighborhood. It's a wine bar on, it's a wine bar in like the East Broadway part of Chinatown.
Nice. Finally, a fictional food scene like from a book or a movie or something made up that you wish you could eat in real life.
Definitely the scene in Spirited Away when No Face is getting bombarded with all the food and he's growing in size, swelling in size. And it's not only the eating and the types of food, but the food is like moving too. It's like this, it's on the wave, and I just want to drown in food sometimes.
You know, people do say Spirited Away as a common answer, but I think everyone says the scene at the beginning when her parents are eating like the kind of dim sum-y things and turning into pigs. And I think the No-Faced feast scene where they're holding these baskets of like things aloft and carrying it over is actually the scene that I would prefer to eat. So that's a great recommendation.
Have you seen Eat, Drink, Man, Woman too?
Yes, I love that food scene.
That one's my reality. That's my realism choice. But both of those are kind of on equal footing. So I was deciding which one to say.
Well, I hope that you can one day be buried amidst food and eat to your heart's content, Jess.
Thank you.
Thanks so much for coming on the show. This was so fun.
Thanks, Eliza.
This is Taste is hosted and produced by Matt Rodbard and me, Eliza Abarbanel. The show is edited by lead producer Clayton Gumbert and supervised by Pat Stango, Director of Media Production and Development at Penguin Random House. Thanks to Shalia Harris and the production team at Penguin Random House. Theme music by Steve Rydell, logo and guest illustrations by Ellie Skurzat. Visit Taste online at tastecooking.com and make sure to subscribe to our newsletter to keep updated on all cool things in the world of taste.